was fabulous. The transplant surgeon had said on the way into the OR, "This is only half the battle," and he wasn't kidding. Recovery was amazing, and it's not always as tough as it was, for Ben, but Ben, they discovered 10 days after he got the new heart that he had a broken hip. Um, yeah, he had broken it. He'd fallen about 2 days before he went in the hospital, and he told me that he had bruised his hip, but he had so many other problems that we didn't think about it twice. So, he actually, when he did come home from the hospital after 10 weeks, he was in a wheelchair, and we knew that he was gonna have to go back sometime in the following 2 months to get the hip replaced. So he was in excruciating pain. He was dependent on painkillers. It was a journey, but at least that part of it we could take together.
Yeah. How did your relationship with Ben evolve through the experience related in On My Way Back to You? And how did you regain your joy?
It brought us closer, ironically, having been apart for 2.5 months, and when he came home, he was in still in such dire straits. That was hard, but at least he was there, and I could hold his hand, or kiss him on the forehead. Those things were really, we really appreciated it, having been
Yeah.
apart for so long. Um, and then you realize, as you have after your sepsis, what things are really important. Once he got the new hip and he was finally learning to walk again, um, we would get snippy with each other, and I'd get mad at myself. I'd just think, This is not why he got a new heart, so that we could argue about
Yeah.
stupid stuff." But it was, it's the reality. You're married. You're under each other's skin. You things, and it was COVID, so I mean, there were a whole lot of different stresses and strains going on. But we got to the point where, as he was learning to walk again and he was learning to do stairs, part of that is something called reciprocal steps, which is when you can go 1 foot, next foot, next foot, next foot, instead of one, 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 one. And we'd be having an argument about something, and he'd walk over to the stairs and he'd say, "Look at me doing reciprocal steps." And we'd both get laughing and just realize that, this silly argument about where you've left your shoes or the dirty dishes in the sink or whatever is just, it's not worth the fight. Let's
Exactly.
laugh.
Exactly. Exactly. What relationship advice do you have for couples experiencing a health crisis?
Um, Keep communicating with each other. Um, it doesn't have to be verbal. It can be a hug or a kiss on the forehead, a squeeze of the hand, exchanged glances, a shared smile. You also have to be gentle with each other. There are going to be moments where you're amazingly exhausted or crankier than you've ever been in your life, and you're going to snap at each other. Um, Learn to say, "I'm sorry," and mean it. Learn to accept an apology. Um, be kind to each other when you can. So,
Wow. I wanted to find out from you because I know that anytime you write a book, you have to relive the experience. And as you were writing your book, what were some of the emotions that came to play? And how were you able to balance it enough to get on to finishing your book?
um, a lot of the process of writing the book was based on my journals. So I didn't necessarily have to write so much as figure out how to connect
Yeah.
things and blend it. There's some PTSD
Mm.
associated with it. Some, again, it's like being pregnant. There are things that you forget, and there's a reason you forget them.
Yeah.
Um, but it was, they were things that were important to making the story whole. I didn't wanna gloss over stuff, and make it sound like a fairy tale, because it wasn't. But we did get a happy ending. In that sense, we have our fairy tale.
That's
So,
good.
yeah.
Great. What do you want the readers and listeners of this episode to take away from your personal experience?
Um, you are strong enough to do these things. You just have to believe in yourself. And life is full of bullet points, graduations and weddings and babies and promotions, but it's also really the moments in between. So rejoice and be glad in them. Uh, and we wouldn't be here if a family in what has to have been their darkest hours didn't make a choice to turn their terrible tragedy into our miracle. Organ donation is an unbelievable blessing and miraculous. It's impacted. I know that the donor, in our case, there were multiple other patients whose lives were also positively impacted, thanks to that family's decision. It's a very brave, generous thing.
If you could go back and give yourself advice from before Ben got sick, what would you tell yourself?
Um, have fun. Keep having fun while you can. Um, the, life isn't meant to be easy all the time. So don't look for the hard stuff. It'll find you, but look for the fun stuff.
Hmm, I like that. How is Ben today?
Annoying, and it's wonderful.
They always are, aren't they? Sometimes I have conversations with other women, and it's very similar the things we talk about and we describe. And as I think, are all the men the same? It's like somebody say my husband does it, and my husband does it the same way, and my husband does it the same. And I'm thinking, are they all from the same chip? But then I think that's the beauty of it. Um, Sometimes when I sit down and I reflect, because most of the time my husband works out away, so most of the time he isn't around, and when he comes around, the moments we laugh a lot, we have our moments where we fight as well, like we argue and all of that. And sometimes when I sit back and I reflect on those moments where we argue, then it makes me laugh. And I think, what was the point? Very, very silly things we argue over. And I'm thinking, what was the point? Some of them don't really make sense. God, recently he came out and said, "You're very boring. You're not romantic at all." And that was an argument. And I'm thinking, what was the point? Sometimes when you sit back and you reflect, but it gives you something to think about. It puts them always in your head, so you never forget about them because you're
Yeah,
always somewhere at the back of your mind thinking about, and then it makes you laugh. And just this evening I was just smiling. My daughter looked at me and said, what is it? And I said something. Something just crossed my mind, and it was her dad who crossed my mind about something silly he just said. So I think it's fun when you think about it, and the things we do. Like you said, life is full of ups and downs, the good moments, the bad moments, but cherish the good moments more, because the bad moments will definitely find you. And I really like it.
yeah.
Um, if you
Ben,
want to, yes.
so Ben has a thing that he says that men and women get married. Men hope that the woman will never change, and the woman always hopes that she can change the man.
That's true, isn't it? That's very, that's very true. But it's life. My God, it's life. It's life. But in all of it, I think that, like you said, we should try and find some joy, some fun
Yeah,
somewhere that will keep us
yeah.
going. As we wrap up, what will your final message be to our listeners, if you have any?
Um, Go out and enjoy this beautiful day. I think there's an eclipse out there. Maybe some
Yes.
people are experiencing.
Hmm.
Once in a
Great.
lifetime. There are a lot of once in a lifetime experiences,
Yeah.
and make the most of them.
Great. We would like to say a massive, massive thank you, Sarah, for coming on podcast with Sheila today.
Thank you, Sheila. It's been lovely to be with you.
Right. If you've been listening in, this is season 2, episode 98 of our podcast series, where we bring seasoned guests with inspiring life experiences to share with us. Do not miss out on all these lovely stories. Subscribe and be notified when a new episode is released. Whilst at it, please drop us a rating. We have an audio presentation of this episode on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all other podcast landing sites. Please don't forget to give us a rating when you visit us. Our prayer for you this week is that you become an advocate and a lover of peace. Remember, change begins with you. Until we meet again, have a brilliant